Mr. Hanna,
Mr. Evans.
do you have the details of the mission prepared before we start recording?
I do.
Okay, so how about you tell me what was James Bond's assignment before we start?
So Bond was sent to investigate a string of murders, which led him to the Caribbean, where he discovered a poppy seed plantation that was being used to create a bunch of drugs that were going to be sent out to get people addicted in order to boost sales. And in the end, Bond prevailed.
Okay, and by the looks of it, the mission is called Live or Let Die.
When you were young and your heart was an open book, you used to say...
We are now recording, and I am your agent on this conversation, Jeremy Evans, along with my partner, Travis Hanna.
Ba-da, ba-da.
And we are looking at the Live or Let Die. This is a mission that Bond is now accepting through his trip to the New Orleans and the Caribbean and much more. So let's go with what was started. So what we have here is it starts out on the report that he was at the United Nations. Travis, can you go into more details about that for me?
Yes. While attending a conference at the United Nations, a man was killed by sound waves through his earpiece not from his translator, but while being translated to. And then a man was killed in New Orleans, right on the street by a funeral procession.
So let's talk about that for a second. So the details was there was a giant parade, and what we saw from the parade is that, it felt like a funeral. And then one of the agents there that worked, for the government, or the British government, was just sitting there chilling. And then all of a sudden that, he was asking a gentleman that came up to him, a short guy with glasses, and he was asking like, whose funeral? And then he said yours. He got stabbed. And then like the coolest way to finish it up is he's dead on the street. They have the parade had a coffin, put the coffin above him, laid it on top of him. It's like the coffin didn't have a bottom by the looks of it, and they put it over him, lift it back up, and they carried it on. And then after that, they go right into a celebration. That is like the most leading introduction to a mission I ever seen out of all the missions he had. And I thought that was really cool because at the same time, it's basically showing that, okay, I don't know who to trust.
Right. No, it was definitely a really neat assassination.
And so then we hear that he gets sent to this island, and he gets basically a ritual is happening where they do this little kind of like tribal dancing, and they threw this, I guess, some like, would you say is blood? Like blood over his thing?
Voodoo is very big in this one.
Okay.
So chicken blood.
Okay.
Is really big. Snakes.
A lot of animal sacrifices. Right. Yeah.
Right. And so they're really a really big African American cast in this, because it does take place in New Orleans with the whole voodoo thing. But yeah, so man is tied up and gets bitten by a poisonous snake and dies.
Mm-hmm. Which that snake looks like you bought from a novelty store or something like that.
Like
it's like if you go to New Orleans, like, hey, we're selling snakes. Yeah,
it was super bright green.
Mm-hmm.
It was really interesting.
And that man, I swear, like that snake didn't bite. It's just like they poked him right in the neck with the teeth. Like they did the work to get that snake to bite. That's why that snake did not move.
It's definitely ridiculous.
And so from there, we go right into, for the first time that we ever seen, that M and Moneypenny decide to give a Bond a house call.
Right. Instead of calling Bond to the office, they go to his house, where he's sleeping with Spanish.
Let's go ahead and call it that. Yeah, let's call it that. Yeah, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Regardless, he bonded.
Yeah.
And so, but they caught him like at 5:48 in the morning, and then Bond's getting his robe on, going to go answer the door and whatnot, and M is coming in, and this is weird because like M doesn't make house calls, so like something went down where they're like, okay, Bond, We need you right now. So after inviting M in and making him the most complicated way to make coffee for him, what do you call those mechanic things that does a million things and then it does something, like a marble rolls down, all that stuff.
Rube Goldberg machine.
Yeah. So that exists in making coffee. As M was like, is there more to this? Because I just want my coffee.
This is all it does.
Right. And so, by the way, can I say that Bond really doesn't care about closing doors? He left the front door open and he halfway closed the closet. I just wanted to point that out. So anyways, during this whole time, he's going through talking about the mission with him that someone got killed down in New Orleans and all that stuff. Bond, I guess, he got introduced to a watch that he'll be using.
Yep, from Q. Q doesn't actually make an appearance in this.
So for this one, in this episode, no Q branch. Just give people, give people a heads up.
Yep, he gets a watch that's delivered by M, but doesn't realize that it's got a magnet, it can attract metal objects at James Bond's will, not the will of magnetism itself.
Right.
But only the things that Bond wants to attract.
And we also don't know how far that magnet can attract because, they never talk about how far it is. So I guess we'll find out later, how far can Bond bring something to him with that watch.
Well, and the power of it. Because there's a half-naked woman running around his apartment. And by the end of it, he uses the watch to open the closet door that she's hiding in.
Terrible waste of power. Go on.
And then uses the watch to unzip the dress she's wearing.
Great way to use the power.
And it's just ridiculous. Throughout the movie, he uses it to kind of try to attract a little boat at one point.
Which we'll get into that a little bit later. It's hilarious. But from there, after he got accepted for his assignment, he ends up flying out to New Orleans. But during that time, we're getting introduced to one of the key things that we see in this mission: tarot cards.
Right.
For people who don't know what tarot cards are, they're basically cards that kind of predict a little bit of the future or events that could happen based on clues of the cards that are saying. So, if you see maybe death on the card, something with death is going to happen. We don't know how it's going to occur, but it's going to happen. So those are kind of those kind of things. So after a quick cutscene of tarot cards and Bond making it to the to New Orleans, he does with all his movies that we've seen. He gets in a car and he heads to his destination. And of course, it doesn't go quite as well as usual for him. But this time it's different because the person in the car is not trying to kill him. He actually just became a victim of this.
Right. So there's a Cadillac that pulls up alongside
Pitmobile.
Definitely a Pitmobile.
Why with the red leather seats? It's amazing.
And then
New Orleans don't play.
There's a targeting system in the side view mirror that targets the driver with a poisonous dart.
Yeah, through the review mirror. I thought that was pretty neat. I thought
it's all right.
Hey, out of all the cards the villains have, that was probably a cool idea at the time. I give him credit for that. I give the villain credit for that. But we find out that character is in a lot of stuff. He's not that one guy you see. Later on he does a lot more stuff. So
the driver, the assassin of the Cadillac assassin.
So after the car kind of goes topsy turvy a little bit, Bond managed to get control and stop the vehicle and all that. But during that event, he's actually meeting up with one of the agents there named Felix,
who's the CIA operative.
And from there, Bond is trying to figure out who's that person that killed the driver. So he ends up, doing some recon, and he ends up picking up a taxi cab, and which we find out that in this particular movie, almost every black person in the film are all together as one. So it's basically, when you look at this, it's Bond against the world, or Bond against the city, or Bond against the black people. Not to sound that kind of way, but that's just how the way the movie is portrayed, of more of everybody in that city are all together working for the same goal.
It's as ridiculous as the end of John Wick 2 and all the assassins that were in the park waiting for John Wick.
Right.
It's just a ridiculous amount of people.
Right. And so after Bond gets taken to this, I guess, this gift shop per se, to investigate stuff. Of course, the driver happens to be one of the people that worked under the villain, and he goes in there, after kind of figuring out that he saw the driver that looked remotely close to the driver that killed his driver on the highway. He ends up, fooling the cashier woman to wrap a present for him, and he goes and investigates the back door, and where he finds the car, and he starts, trying to investigate. But during that moment, we meet our Bond girl,
Solitaire,
a very
named after the card game.
Yeah, but
because she uses tarot cards as her gimmick.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
But the question is, though, I couldn't tell you what she is. Is she white?
I think she's just Creole.
Okay.
I think she's just from New Orleans.
Okay. And so from there, Bond is hiding, and they're getting ready to head to the next location. And then, of course, Bond follows, but what Bond doesn't know, that he's being followed.
Right.
So
he hails a cab.
Right.
And everywhere he goes in this car, like in the cab, following this Cadillac, like every black person he crosses paths with has a radio that is giving the 411 of where he is in relation to that.
So I give Bond credit that he is playing optimistic of not every black person is working together, right? Like, there has to be one out there that will help me, not be that. But of course, that is not working out. So after he's taking into to the next location, he gets taken to, I guess, what do you want to say, a little restaurant called Filet of Soul, I believe.
Well, and this is also the name of the establishment in the beginning of the movie where the funeral procession assassination took place. It's not the same location, because this one's in New York.
Oh, okay.
Whereas that one was in New Orleans.
That's right.
Filet of Soul.
Oh, yeah, because they're in Harlem. I forgot.
Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
so Filet of Soul is the establishment name for the bad guy.
So my bad. Let me retract from my report that he flew into New York, not New Orleans. I said that earlier. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he flew into New York. So anyway, so here he is in this restaurant where, of course, he stands out like a sore thumb, aka white.
And he orders a drink that's not a martini. I couldn't hear, because he talks really low in this movie.
It's a pretty loud club, I guess. I don't know.
And he looks like he ordered a brandy or.
Do you think when he walked in,
bourbon?
like he probably believed that they wouldn't sell martini? Maybe just like, I don't think this place would do it.
Well, I don't know, because he doesn't have a drink after this.
That's true.
So I thought it was very peculiar he didn't ask for a vodka martini.
But it has to be at a ritzy place, It has to be the place that fits the feel for a martini,
You think?
I guess. I mean, if you look at the history, we'll find out later on in the series if it's only fancy places that he orders a martini.
I mean, he didn't ask for Tanqueray or Red Stripe. He asked for a bourbon.
Is Tanqueray a girl? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
But he sits down at a table, which ends up being like a secret passageway into a hidden room where all the henchmen are waiting, and Solitaire is doing his fortune.
And so basically, they play this little back and forth conversation, and he gets introduced by our first henchman to this mysterious villain. Yeah, it's basically, that's his name, Teehee. And guess what he likes doing? He loves smiling. This is a guy, out of all the henchmen I have seen in Bond films, that he loves his job. Like, you rarely see him not smile. He loves his job. And also, too, he has a metal arm that can just almost been everything you could think of, because like they had to check him to see if he has a weapon. He grabs it with no problem at all, bending that gun in half.
Right. He asks if Bond is armed, and Bond hands over his gun, and the guy just basically bends the front of it, and Bond literally just drops it in a waste paper basket.
Yeah,
in front of everybody, like, well, this is useless,
right? And so,
he starts flirting with Solitaire, and the lover's card comes up out of the tarot deck, which is a running theme for half of the movie between him and Solitaire.
And then we finally get to meet the man behind all the things that's been happening to Bond right now,
Mr. Big.
And Mr. Big, actually,
not Sex in the City, Mr. Big.
No. But you would think a James Brown song would probably come in right when he walks into that room.
That actually would have been pretty cool.
Right. And so Papa got a brand new bag or something like that. That would have been a cool intro for him to come in.
Or even if it was just playing in the background, like in his...
Right.
Because he walks out of a meeting, so it's like closed off. That would have been pretty cool.
And the funny part about it is he says... Basically, the line he says here is basically what his whole goal of him with Bond is. So he comes in and he says, "Hi, Mr. Big. My name is Mr. Let me introduce myself." He said, "Names are for people on graves. Get rid of them." And that's it. And then they, Bond just, walks out with the two guys, and he gets sent to what it seems like a back alley.
Yeah.
A very open back alley.
There's a bunch of rundown buildings where there's like bricks and debris everywhere. Like the kind of place you expect to find a dead body.
Right. And so from there, Bond was trying to do his first attempt to get these two guys, but those guys were too smart. Like, nope, keep moving, hands up. And so they keep going, and then Bond managed to see one of those fire escapes and swung one down.
The ones with on the sides of buildings that you see in movies or TV shows with New York. They had just the metal fire escapes that you can climb down and climb up.
And so he managed to swing his way down, knock out both of them, and 2 feet kick to the chest.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, and so from there he meets another fellow with a gun that he thought worked for Mr. Big, but it's not. He is an agent that works with Phoenix, that is working for located in Harlem, and his name is what is his? What is?
I never got it.
It
doesn't matter because spoiler alert. He's going to die and nobody's going to care.
Right. So,
but he works for the CIA. He's one of Felix's guys that just kind of hides out in Harlem, and he takes Bond back to Felix.
And so from there, he basically gets a heads up with like his next mission, where he needs to go next. So he ends up heading to, I believe it's time to head to New Orleans.
Right. He heads to New Orleans, where we get the first glimpse of kind of an odd, I don't even want to call him a bad guy, because he didn't really even really attack Bond. Like,
no,
he's like a side character.
Mm-hmm. He's one of the henchmen.
Is he though, really?
Per se.
Because I feel like he's more there for a mysticism effect. His name is Baron Samedi.
And by the way, people, this is Bond going into a hotel while we're getting introduced to this person.
Right. So but this Baron Samedi guy, like anybody who played GoldenEye for 64, he was the tall black dude with the top hat and the half-painted face. He's some kind of voodoo priest, and he's at this hotel that Bond is staying at. He's part of some like live show.
He's an entertainer.
It's kind of bizarre.
It's kind of like when you go, like if you go to like an exotic island and they do those kind of tribal, traditional routine dances, African dances, Hawaiian, whatever. It's kind of like this, but this is more of a seductive, creepy African style ceremony where, he's wearing an all suit with the short shorts of no other, with a top hat, and it's supposed to bring more of a more of a excitement, awkward movement going on, I guess.
I would say anybody who saw Disney's The Frog Prince,
Okay.
the bad guy in that, I think, was modeled after Baron Samedi.
Okay.
Kind of creepy with the top hat. But yeah, it's just really.
He stands out. He's odd, but it was a good odd. I think he stands out a lot. I thought he was really cool.
I kind of wish we would have seen more from him.
I think he should have been the villain because, like, he just sets up like you look like a guy that we should be paying attention to. Than Mr. Biggs right now,
Right.
because I feel like Mr. Biggs is the person that just works in that section, but we're getting sent to New Orleans, and then when you show this guy, you look like, oh, is he the guy behind everything? That's what I get a feel, I guess, when I go into this scene. So basically, he's just, he's wild, he's crazy, he's insane. He has a music band playing in the background. He has a girl tied up like you would see in King Kong, and he's just having the time of his life. But him and Bond do not interact at all. Like, he's just doing his thing, and Bond just, is just walking by. But before that, apparently Bond, while checking in, apparently got his room changed because apparently his wife, Mrs. Bond, changed rooms. And
Right. As for the more romantic and private suite,
he gets into this room. I'm going to probably say this wrong, but I think it's room B12 or something like that. And so he heads up there, which, it's scary right here because he's getting accompanied by another person that looks like he would probably work under the main Mr. Biggs. So you just don't know who to trust right now. And
Right.
And then of course another tarot card comes in another appearance everywhere like that. And so I think that comes with the voodoo style and everything like that. And so from there, he does where he's a pro at. Thank goodness he does. One of our favorite segment, check your room.
Right.
And so, what are we checking for?
Well, he's getting ready to send a Morse code message, and before he does a sweep of his room to look for bugs, and he finds one in a lamp that's kind of artistic, and then one in his headboard that is fabric, and behind one of the buttons on the headboard is a microphone. So he at least did a better job of checking his hotel room.
And that device really did all the work for him. Like, he didn't have to really lift anything up or look for anything. There was no spiders under the bed or anything like that. He had a device that did all that. So after he did his Morse code and whatnot, he decided to take a bath. And what came to a surprise, Mr. Hanna?
Well, it's leading up to one of the most ridiculous scenes I've seen since the tarantula. But as he's taking a bath and shaving, a hidden passage opens up, and somebody drops a snake into his bathroom. And
what kind of snake do you think that is? I'm not really good with snakes. If you had to guess,
taipan.
Okay,
is what I was thinking, but I'm probably way off. It's it looks like it's got like a white belly, and then like a black top with white dots.
Okay,
going all the way down it. But while the snake's coming in, the Cadillac assassin brings in some champagne that Bond ordered, and nothing ever really happens out of that, other than we realize that this guy can't talk very loud. And like whispers.
And by the way, it seems like it's the same guy that was in the Pimpmobile.
Right, the Cadillac assassin.
Yeah, the guy that he was been following the whole time, but Bond still haven't really put two and two together, or he's just playing dumb.
I think he's playing dumb.
And so,
but after he leaves, he notices the snake. And something kind of interesting here is this Bond has cigars. And for the viewers at home, cigars are lit cigars plus aftershave equal flamethrower, because that's how he kills the snake.
don't you think that was a little bit of overkill?
It was extremely overkill.
I think it was just more of, oh, that's cool, because that's like the biggest flamethrower I ever seen what a spray can do, and the fact that a cigar can really lit that up that quick.
A cigar cannot light that up.
Yeah. For people that don't know, Mr. Hanna is a big cigar smoker, and so he has confirmed that.
Well, Mythbusters confirmed that lit cigarettes and lit cigars do not get wet things. Do not catch wet things on fire, because it's the fumes of those things that catch on fire. So
a lighter.
If you spray a cigarette with gasoline, the liquid in the gasoline will put out the heat of the cigarette.
Okay. So basically, a lighter is like the only way to do that.
Right.
Okay. So
an open flame of some kind.
So speaking of hot flames, we get introduced to a mysterious woman that apparently decided to reach. For some reason, she thought putting a gun through the door and just hope that Bond is in that right position would just shoot. But Bond, of course, captured and finds out that this lovely black woman. We didn't really. Did we get a name of this?
Rosie.
Rosie. Okay, so Rosie was actually working under Felix, and this is apparently her second mission.
Right. She was the handler for the first guy that got attacked by the snake and died.
Mm-hmm. And so from there, they end up having a conversation about she's nervous and all this stuff, and Bond was trying to mention trying to test her what her knowledge is and whatnot, as while he's having a conversation where he ends up blocking off cameras and sound on a pineapple where he first searched at the beginning, and then on the headbed.
So he tears out He tears out the microphone that was in the head of the bed.
Okay.
And then he smashes a grape into the speaker of the one that was in the lamp, like that's supposed to do something. But anyway, Rosie starts freaking out because she sees the dead snake, and then Bond starts making his moves, trying to get some action, and Rosie tells him that Felix warned her about him, so she got a hotel with 2 separate rooms. But when she goes into her room, there's like a tiny top hat with some feathers that have blood on them or something.
Supposed to be like a sign of something, apparently, in the voodoo culture, I guess.
And so she's kind of freaked out and ends up sleeping with Bond.
Yep. And so what happens the next day? Well, apparently he managed to find a jean jacket and pants. Sort of.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible.
Welcome to the 70s, folks. Because this was happening in 1973.
It's basically a light blue leisure suit. It's pretty terrible.
So while he was getting his breakfast, which apparently he trusts that this is not going to be something that's going to kill him, he's introduced with another interesting gift from somebody, with a tarot card that basically said, I think it said Queen of Cups.
Queen of Cups.
That was shaped upside down.
Mm-hmm. So he tells Rosie, who's taking a shower, that he has to head out for a minute, and he goes to the tarot shop he saw on the way in.
And then from there,
then him and Rosie end up looking for a boat. So I don't really understand what happened in the tarot shop. Right.
It seems like maybe he went to go find out what that means. And that's why he probably went to the tarot place to find the definition of like, what does this card mean? Because there's no other reason to go in there, So I'm assuming he went to go see what that card meant. That's why he said, "Hey, I'll be right back." And so he ends up picking a boat with a fellow fisherman just sitting there sleeping. He kicks him, wakes him up, of course, and then they get in the boat and they ship off. They're heading to basically, I guess you could say he's recon or landscaping the area to see what's going on, and of course he takes Rosie with him.
He pretends that he's out fishing, and they set the scene up to be like this fisherman works for Mr. Big. Rosie is like taking off her clothes and she's in a bikini. And she accidentally finds some electronics and thinks the fisherman is a bad guy. So she goes up with a gun. She's down below deck changing, and sees this fisherman like wrapping up cords and thinks that he's about to hang Mr. Bond. And anyway, so the guy in actuality is working for Bond. Bond knows who he is, and he's just trying to help him survey and find out where Mr. Big might be hiding.
Right. So basically, from there, after the official was like checking her out, we go back to where I guess while they were kind of scanning the area of the Caribbean, they noticed an island. They were in this giant tower. This beautiful castle, I guess you could say, on this island. They were trying to get information on who is up there. So we go right to where we meet Miss Solitare again, where she's doing her tarot cards, and we find out that
the boat driver explains that Miss Solitaire lives up there.
Oh, okay.
And that she's some kind of voodoo witch.
Okay.
And that nobody has been brave enough to go up there except for Mr. Big.
Okay. So, but we find out that basically her role in all of this is to basically just kind of predict what Mr. Big's, anytime Mr. Big has an idea or he wants to do something, he looks to her for
Guidance.
information and prediction of will this work out?
Right.
What will happen if I did this? What I did that?
And ever since that first encounter, every time Bond is involved, the lover's card keeps popping up.
And Mr. Biggs is not quite happy about that.
Well, he doesn't really know. She hides it from him.
Oh, okay. But he feels something is up. He feels something is up, but regardless, so I guess from there, he finds out that Mr. Bond is on the island apparently, and basically to the point, he says, like he said at the very beginning, he's like, find him and kill him. That's all I want. Just find him and kill him. Okay.
And also at the same time, Rosie is taking Bond to where the last secret agent was found dead. Mm-hmm. And Bond discovers that her story has changed a little bit. So he convinces her to have a picnic where they bond a little bit. They do a little bonding in the jungle.
Bonding it.
Yeah, and then he informs her that he knows that she's a spy and gets some information out of her. And she sees a coconut scarecrow that freaks her out.
But how did he discover that card?
Huh?
The tarot card. The tarot card gave him an idea that she was,
the Queen of Cups.
Yeah, the Queen of Cups, which I think is the reason why he went to that shop.
Well, no, maybe.
To get a translation idea. That's just a theory.
Maybe.
But apparently gave him an idea that she is not who she claimed to be.
Right.
And so he mentioned the scarecrows. So on this island, we noticed there's a lot of scarecrows, and they're actually cameras.
Right. And so Rosie gets made. She sees one of the scarecrows and freaks out. Bond thinks it's a ruse. She runs off, and actually one of the scarecrows ends up shooting her in the back and killing her. It's to be expected in a Bond film at this point.
Right. So before we move on, let's take a break from the recording and, let me go grab myself a drink. And when we come back, we will continue this mission. Hey, this is Jeremy Evans, a.k.a. your in-game boss. And I want to thank you so much for listening to this podcast as part of the In-Game Boss program, a network of gaming and other variety of these shows that you can find on Podbean, YouTube, and of course iTunes. Shows like the In-Game Boss Podcast, the Gaming Halls of Rivalries, Bond Never Dies, and Area 44. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the show. And welcome back to Bond Never Dies. I'm your agent, Jeremy Evans, along with my partner, Travis Hanna. And we are doing the mission of Live or Let Die, where Bond is being sent to New Orleans / the Caribbean to investigate more about the murder and more of who Mr. Biggs is. So let's continue on with after the death of Miss Rosie.
So Rosie's killed by the coconut scarecrow, and Bond decides that he is going to go back to the boat and paraglide. So the boat is pulling him, and he's up in the air like you see in the movies, or if you've actually done.
Why do you think the scarecrow did not want to kill Bond in the moment where Rosie died?
That's because if they did that, the movie would be over.
Okay, so paragliding.
So Bond signals to the boat below that he's going to detach, and the special effects here are pretty spectacular because they go from what appears to be nighttime, which is done with like gels over the camera, so it's actually daytime and you can see that the sun is still out because there's shadows.
It's kind of like you put a filter.
Yeah,
That's what it looks like. It feels like you put a filter
but
over
like
it.
it starts out with a dark filter, and then I think like they lost the filter because it gets bright all of a sudden, and then it kind of gets a little dark again. And at this point, Bond is
Maybe it's dark up there.
maybe Bond is paragliding and like paraglides into a henchman by the cliff and kicks him off, and then circles back around to land his paraglider. It's ridiculous.
So we know that not a lot of henchmen patrol the island, apparently, since that one important guy is gone. So Bond is free to roam around all he wants now, as he changed his outfit into a reversible, not black outfit, and continues on, where he gets to meet Miss Solitaire.
That's right.
And so right when they go in that room, Bond challenged her to, well, basically she left for a minute, and then when she came back, she saw Bond taking over her throne. So for people that don't know, Miss Solitaire has her own little private room where she does her tarot cards. And so it's kind of like her own little, I guess her own little cathedral, her own little,
it's just
little
like,
shrine area.
Yeah, it's just the room where she's got like this really elaborate chair that has like a cape attached to the chair and a headpiece.
Yeah, so she dresses up like a peacock, basically.
Right, so when she's sitting in the chair, it looks like she's wearing a cape and this headpiece, but really they're just part of the chair. But Bond is sitting wearing the cape and is throwing tarot cards out, and of course throws out the lover's card.
And she still doesn't quite believe that, so Bond does it again, like, hey, pull a card, any card kind of trick. Pulls the card, happens to be the lover again, and she falls for it. She believes that they're meant to be for a second. And so they end up making love, but what we don't know is Bond had plenty of time apparently before she discovered that Bond's in there, because all the cards were all lover cards. So she didn't really put that in the thinking mind of, he could have just made all the cards are. And that shows that she has a lot of tarot cards, enough to have a full deck of lovers to happen.
I didn't catch that.
You didn't catch that? The lover, all those lovers on the cards?
Well, we just see the one.
Well, right here, if you're looking at the video, if you're watching it with us, you'll see right when they start making love, they all say lover cards.
Oh, I missed that scene.
Yeah, they all say
probably taking notes. That's hilarious.
Yeah. So they're all
okay.
They're all lover cards. So like the question is how many cards does she own? Enough for Bond to make them all lover cards.
Or maybe that's why Bond went to that tarot shop.
Oh, you're right.
To get all the lover cards.
There you go. And so
anyway, him and Solitaire do it.
Bonding it.
And
bonding it.
She starts freaking out because she believes that now that she's no longer a virgin, that's right, Bond got her V card, that she won't be able to interpret the tarot cards anymore.
Because also on top of that, if we remember, her mother was a tarot card person. And,
right, it runs in her family. And so after her mother lost her virginity, she could no longer do it. And her grandmother.
Thanks, Bond.
Yeah.
You ruined it for everybody.
So she's a little distraught, and he convinces her everything's okay, and she wants to go for a second round of sex.
And then convince her to run away with him.
Right. Tells her that he can get her onto a boat and they can escape the island from Mr. Big.
So that was a long trip to that boat. So let's talk about what all he did to get to that boat.
Okay, so they're walking through like the jungle, and they come across Baron Samedi again, who just kind of gives them a greeting, doesn't really interact with them too much. They're just kind of walking by, and he's playing some kind of like pan flute.
And remember, Bond and them have never met. Remember, the only time they maybe saw each other was at the hotel, but I think he was aware of him than Bond is aware of Baron.
Right.
So
they find the poppy plantation and get attacked by a helicopter.
barely almost got killed by that thing. Barely. Go Bond with that luck.
Did you see how close those bullets were?
They were way off. I'm just kidding. And so after that one shot at them, they lost them in 2 seconds.
Right, because there's like a netting over the poppy, so people from the sky can't really identify that they're growing poppy plants. Mm-hmm. It just looks like bushes that are tall. And so Bond and Solitaire end up in this little village where they steal a double-decker bus.
Mm. Oh, yeah, by the way, they go to a scene of Mr. Biggs again, and he says a line that he's been saying the whole time: find him and kill him. Moving on.
So a big chase ensues with the double-decker bus with local police who are on motorcycles and then who are in cars.
You can tell by those guys, they really don't get a lot of action on that island.
They don't, because Bond is literally like, he hits like this patch of water or something and like gets the bus to do a 180. And all the motorcycles just like scatter and crash for no reason.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because also, too, going back, don't forget, Bond is the only white guy on the island. You know, so he stands like a sore thumb. Like, everybody can find him in a second. So while he was getting chased, he managed to control the balance weight of a double-decker bus and managed to do a 360 spin without tipping over. But the bikers had the worst time of their lives doing that because they were sliding like there was oil on the water. I mean, oil on the street. And then the cops managed to survive and chase him down. By the way, only one cop car survived, apparently. Even though both cop cars did not, like,
he
get caught up.
He swerved like he was going to hit both cop cars, and they, like, drove off the road.
That bus is fast, apparently. That bus is super fast.
This whole all the chases in this movie are
something else.
Well, they're melodramatic. Like there's like a lot of possibility. Like Bond ends up ripping off the top of the double-decker bus by driving under a short bridge.
That's what it was. So you saw a short bridge, and instead of stopping, he went for it, and that top part fell perfectly where the cop car ran into it and crashed. By the way, this is the only movie so far we've seen where cars don't blow up. Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
That's crazy.
That's actually very true.
Yeah, they just crash, and that's it.
But there is an explosion coming. And one of the most ridiculous chases of the movie.
And so he managed to make it to town, and they make it to the docks, and they end up escaping and heading back to New Orleans. Yeah. So from there, they're about to head to the airport.
Well, no, they're at the airport, and they're about to head.
Sorry, they made it back, and as they're leaving the airport, they were going to be heading back to Felix.
Right, and they caught a cab.
And guess who's in the car?
And it's the same cab driver from New York that took them to Harlem. Mm-hmm. Turns out he works for Mr. Biggs.
Mm-hmm. And so from there, they were about to get on the plane to meet Mr. Biggs, and then I got confused here if Miss Solitaire was on Bond's side or was she was helping trapping Bond in there, because that was a confused scene for me.
I think she was playing off like she was a double agent so that she wouldn't get into as much trouble.
Okay, so so from there,
this cab driver takes him to the airport, where they're going to load him up into a plane and push him out without a parachute. Basically, is what they imply. But Bond ends up stealing a little Cessna type airplane, and there is a car chase.
But who's in that plane? I believe it was a lady that was trying to learn how to fly, and Mr. Bond decided to be the teacher for a minute.
Right. It was another attempt at comedy, and it was really bad.
So basically, in a nutshell, they flew around the airport, never took off ever.
Yeah, they didn't fly. They drove around the airport in an airplane.
And for some reason, all the cars at the airport apparently have the most slickest wheels of all time because they were sliding everywhere. And I think a particular scene, you saw the same scene where a car crashed into a bunch of barrels of chemical stuff again inside the thing. So after they tried to close the door on Bond when he was flying through this warehouse, he managed to make it through, but the wings are gone. And apparently, I guess they just stopped chasing him because he managed to stop back at this office where the flight instructor was supposed to teach the woman. But that didn't work out. And then Bond just went on his merry way to the next thing.
Yeah, it kind of cuts back to in downtown New Orleans where the fillet of soul.
Mm-hmm.
Like Bond is talking to Felix, and then there's an agent.
They're supposed to go meet up. What's his face?
Yeah, the black guy that helped him out in Harlem is waiting outside of the Fillet of Soul in New Orleans, and the same funeral procession comes by, and they don't show it, but they imply that he was killed. And when Felix and Bond show up, they ask each other about him. They're like, oh, he's probably inside. And then that's the last we hear about this poor guy.
You know what's funny? I didn't mind seeing this funeral again because I thought it was so cool at first. Like, I would watch that same scene again and see what happened to this guy this time, just for the heck of it. I did like that setup. I thought that was a pretty cool, neat setup to full play. It's messed up. It's a messed up thing, but it was really clever at the same time. So they, like he said, they try to meet up with him, didn't work out. They maybe asked a question where he would be, and then they moved on. So they end up going into
the Fillet of Soul.
Yeah, where apparently Mr. Biggs has a setup in there because basically Bond ran into the same situation that he did last time.
Well, they asked him if he wants a table or a booth, and the first time he took a booth. And it ended up being a secret passage. So this time,
I think it was the bourbon that messed it all up. I don't think it was the seat.
Right.
He shouldn't do it bourbon.
So he's offered a booth this time, and he says, "No, I'll prefer a table." And so they get a table right in front of a stage where there's performing, where there's a performance happening, and Felix gets called away for a phone call.
Can I pause for a second? Can I give Bond another credit of still being optimistic that it's not all black people against him yet? I just want to give him credit that that the people in there were not trying to come off as, all the black people are bad. So good for them. But in retrospect, you're not supposed to trust any of these black people in this town. So go on.
So Felix gets called away, and he thinks it's that agent that's missing. And while he's gone away, so Paul McCartney did the theme song for Live and Let Die. And throughout the whole movie, there are little tidbits of Live or Let Die playing in the background.
You will hear it about more than 10 times in this film.
The performer on stage is literally just singing Live and Let Die over and over again to Bond, and Bond starts sinking into the floor, and as he disappears into the floor, they bring out another table and chair and make it look like Bond just got up, so when Felix gets back, he doesn't know where Bond is, and he starts asking. Right. And then that's the last time I think we see Felix until the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what happened this time, Travis? So he gets brought in.
So
same setup as last time.
Bond gets brought downstairs, and Mr. Big is there with Solitaire and Teehee, the guy with the claw hand. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Big starts asking if Bond had sex with Solitaire.
Can I take this one? Can I take this one? Go for it. So basically, what happened is Miss Solitaire can't really do her magic anymore. Her abilities to tarot card. Why? Because Mr. Biggs thinks that Mr. Bond has sex with her, and he tends to ask him many times. But I'm going to say it the way I think he should have said it. But in this movie, he said, "Did he touch her?" But we all know the way he wanted to say it is, "Look, man, she ain't doing her magic. I'm not seeing this. So I got one question to ask you: did you hit that? Okay, did you hit that?" And Bond was basically saying like, "Look, I don't know you like that, and I don't think it's none of your business." So it's like, come on, man, be serious. Did you hit that? And then Bond goes into like, look, I'm not gonna talk to you. I want to talk to
Kananga.
Yeah, I want to talk.
Who is the guy who's supposed to be over Mr. Big?
Yeah. So what happened? Mr. Big rips off his mask because Rick Baker's amazing.
So he's wearing a prosthetic face.
Yeah.
And so when Bond won't talk, he just rips off the face.
And if people don't put two and two together, at the very beginning of the movie at the UN, he was one of the representatives of his country sitting there. So you got a glimpse of what he looked like before all this. And then throughout the whole thing, he's the one on the phone telling everybody to go kill him. So after he reveals himself, Bond and Kananga go into this conversation about what his main objective is. He's supposed to what was it?
Well, he's going to give billions of dollars worth of heroin to the streets for free in an effort to get people addicted to it so that his sales will go up.
Okay. So this plan was going great, but he doesn't know if it'll work out or not. Because Solitude can't work her magic or her powers, so he asked him one more time, "Did you hit that?"
Yeah. And Bond says, "It's not an answer a gentleman would tell," or something along those lines.
Yeah. So after all that, he just says, "Okay, you're good. You're good to go."
Well, no, he says, "Give me your watch."
Oh, give me your watch. Yeah, that's right.
And so he asks he reads the serial number on the back of the watch off
To test her. That's
right. And he asks Solitaire, is he telling the truth about the number, or did he lie about some of the numbers? And she says that he's telling the truth. And so he lets Bond go. Now, if Solitaire got this wrong, Teehee was going to cut off Bond's pinky finger, and then they implied his manhood after that.
Right. Every time you get something wrong, it gets worse, apparently.
Right. And so it turns out that they knocked Bond out, and it turns out that...
after they were fooling him that he was good to go, like, you're good, man. She told the truth. Yeah, you can go.
So Solitaire did not tell the truth, or was not accurate, and... Kananga knew that Bond hit that. And so basically tells her that she's going to die, that he's going to kill her.
And so during all that, where did Bond go this time? Well, he ends up going to one of the laboratories where they do, the drugs and all whatnot.
Right, so it's like a little shack. It looks like a shack on the outside, but it's actually like a secret laboratory on the inside.
AKA an alligator farm? Can we say that? Is it alligator farm?
It's definitely, they definitely filmed it at a place where, the croc hunter would work.
Yeah.
Because they have alligators and crocodiles in the same kind of pit, and they feed them like pets. It looks like somewhere that, you could go and feed crocodiles if you wanted.
Right.
But they strand Bond on this concrete island that's used for the crocodiles.
By the way, why did Bond walk in front of him? Bond walked in front of him, knew this was set up, but then again, they had the guy at the car says, "Come on."
It's because they had to set up this really cool scene. So there's a scene where a few crocodiles are lined up in a way that, like in a video game, you could run across them.
Hold up. Can we talk about the moment here? Okay, so two things happen.
Okay.
One, I forgot that he got the watch bought back to Bond, because now we get to talk about what does this watch do. So second attempt of how powerful this watch is. This watch apparently can pull a boat, because there's two metal handles on each side of the boat where you would put paddles through to help yourself row. So go ahead.
So there's like a boat tied up, and it's got two metal brackets for oars. And he's trying to use that to attract the boat, but he can't get it to untether.
Because it was, tethered to a tree. So, now, back to what you were talking about.
Okay, so it just so happens that there are some crocodiles lined up in such a way that any video game character could jump across them.
Pitfall.
And Bond actually, in 3 leaps, manages to run across these crocodiles and make it to safety. Now, in reality, his stuntman really did this to real crocodiles.
Bravo to him.
So
you kind of, it's dumb, but you also appreciate it at the same time.
So when you watch this film, what you see is those are real crocodiles in a real crocodile pit, and the stuntman did it in the first take, I believe.
Okay.
I believe it was the first take, but I know for sure that he did it for real.
So after all of that, he ends up making it across, and he ends up deciding, you know what, I'm going to bring the party to them. So he ends up grabbing some bait that they use to feed the alligators, and tracks at least one alligator into the little shack where they're doing the lab drugs and all that kind of stuff. And then while doing that, he decided that wasn't enough, so he decided to find gasoline, and he ended up kind of throwing it around the shack and burning it up. So the younger version of Michael Clark Duncan with a metal arm comes out, yelling with the rest of his crew.
That's Teehee for the listeners.
Teehees for guys. And he ends up finding a speedboat and ends up speeding away into what we like to call the longest chase scene in a Bond film so far. How long was it, Travis?
I don't know how long it was, but it was probably
About 20 minutes.
About that, because they introduced a really ridiculous character. So this movie is full of stereotypes. We have seen a lot of black stereotypes. This is the redneck small town sheriff stereotype, who just has the world's biggest dip in his mouth at all times.
Named Sergeant Pepper.
And is just completely incapable of doing his job and shouldn't be a sheriff.
Mm-hmm. He's one of those guys, I'm going to get you Duke boys next time. Those kind of voices like that. Or Smokey the Bandit. That's that feel you get. And so during this huge chase of many, many, many cutscenes of everything, Bond is basically making his way all the way from the back of the bayous back to the city.
Right.
And so we're seeing like the biggest stunts happening. Now, just to kind of speed this through, one of the henchmen that was there was supposed to meet up with Bond to catch him, but Sergeant Pepper ended up ruining that. Ended up Bond making a cross over them, over a giant leap over somehow. Then Bond managed to basically cross a lot of streets with the boat into another part of the river and still keep coasting as he's still further on. And then all of a sudden, Sergeant Pepper mentioned that no one can catch him except his brother, apparently, that has the fastest speedboat of all time, apparently.
It's the fastest boat in the bayou.
Or something like that. But his brother ends up being knocked out by one of the henchmen that worked under Mr. Biggs, or Kananga now. And he ends up grabbing that boat and chasing him down, where they end up having this giant chase scene. But at the end, Bond managed to find some kind of weird
kerosene,
or something like that, throw in his face. Bond the henchman ends up speeding the boat a million times around in a circle. Bond managed to pick the right time to hit this thing to make him go forward. That made him go into
circles.
And then he ended up speeding into this warehouse where
so Bond throws the kerosene or whatever in the guy's face and blinds him, and then as a result, the throttle gets pushed up, and so the boat is just going as fast as it can in circles, and Bond comes up alongside of it and guides it into a wrecked ship or something, and the boat ends up blowing up. So we didn't get a car blow up, we got a boat blow up this time.
And by the way, so far there has been more than 10 cars in this movie that have crashed, but no explosion yet. Just throwing that out there. Even a boat crashed into a car and did not explode.
Yep.
This is pretty amazing. They really, really cut the budget on the explosive cars. So, anyways, after all that, and after Sergeant Pepper got that square away that they're agents and whatnot, they move on to the next task, and that was to visit the island where it all got started, where the agent that got sent down there died, and where Miss Solitaire is now been taken to, because she is now worthless to Tanaka. So after they managed to make it on the island and whatnot, Bond is kind of scoping out the ceremony that's going on, because of course, if you remember watching the beginning, they do a ceremony to kind of set the mood of killing somebody. So during this event, his partner, the same fisherman from earlier, is planting bombs all over the plantation to get ready to destroy it all.
Right.
So, but Bond had to wait for that stuff to explode. He thought it would be a good distraction to go and save Solitaire. But the problem was that they kind of speeded up a little bit. The man with the snake that you saw before was about to kill her, but it got halted by who? Mr. Baron. Baron comes out of a cemetery, which we find out that is not really him, per se.
No, it was him.
Well, remember when on the next scene, he shoots and he shot the chip off the head?
Yeah. That's the mysticism of Baron Samedi. He's immortal.
Okay, so he's immortal. Sorry.
And so Bond, what he's talking about is Bond shoots him, and he basically crumbles like clay to the ground. And then, as Bond's fighting everybody off, Baron Samedi comes back, and Bond punches him into a casket full of snakes that bite him to death. So
for people that watch it for the first time, and you're not listening to the show, you would think that's not really him, but it really was him. And so
Bond and Solitaire escape through the platform that Baron Samedi came up on, and they end up running into Kananga again. And Kananga ties them up to this hoist platform and starts cutting Bond's forearms.
By the way, one more thing. Guess what? Bond finally gets in his hand. He gets a martini in his hand.
It's champagne.
Can you just let me have this one?
Nope, champagne. Because Kananga thinks he's won, so he's toasting. But also, before we move on, Bond has this gun that shoots special darts, and the Cadillac assassin is sitting on this couch. And so Kananga shoots the couch with the dart, and the whole couch completely inflates until it pops.
It's a balloon gun.
It's a
balloon gun. Yeah,
it's a balloon gun.
Mm-hmm. And so after all that, he gets tied up. He gets tied up to this what it looks like a crane or some sort.
Right. It's like a platform, and Kananga gets a knife and cuts Bond's forearms in an attempt to attract some sharks that he has in a pit.
One shark, and this shark looks like it's from Jaws. It looked like he got recast. Actually, it's
not,
before it. It's before that.
It's not as big.
Look. This is the shark that grows to be Jaws.
Is it?
Yes. Let's use that theory. Think about it, guys. Go on.
So Bond's watch we find out is not just a magnet, but also a buzzsaw, and he cuts through.
There's so much he could have done with that.
Activates the magnet and attracts one of the bullets, one of the darts that the gun shoots that inflates people. Or inflates, I just gave it away. That inflates things, and him and Kananga end up fighting underwater. And
by the way, before we find out that what happens, let's cut back for a second. What this watch can do. So basically, what we realized from the watch can brought a spoon to him. It could bring a boat to him, and it brought one of those balloon bullets to him. Right?
Yeah, and it undressed.
Yes.
The chick in the beginning.
Yes. During this whole time, he didn't care to use it to bring the knife to him where he was carrying a knife towards him.
Nope.
No. There was a lot of stuff on that table, but happens that balloon bullet happens to go to him. So apparently he can pick and choose what he can do with it.
Right.
That is a weird mechanism.
Thank you, Q, for being so precise.
Right.
So him and Kananga fight underwater, and he gets Kananga with the dart. And Kananga's body literally...
He shoved it in his mouth, right?
Yeah. And Kananga's body, inflates.
By the way, it's the weirdest knife fight before that happens. It's the weirdest thing.
Floats out of the water to the ceiling of the room and then pops.
It's so unexpected, and it was so freaking fast. They didn't build it up. They didn't build it up of him
Oh, I guess it didn't float up. I take that back. He blew up underwater.
No. He goes up. He goes up, but all his body parts fall into that water.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm right. He hits the ceiling.
No blood.
No blood, no guts. Hits the ceiling and just blows up like a balloon.
No bones, nothing. no.
It looks like something out of Zoolander.
Yeah. And so from there. And I'm gonna say this line because Bond decided not to say this line in the movie. He could have said, "Well, I guess that blew up in his face." So that would have been a good line. You're welcome, right. Bond. Take that one for next time. But
from one prick to another,
right? So after all that, he managed to escape on this little monorail-looking car that he uses. That what Kananga used
Right.
to get around everywhere he wanted
It's
to go.
very, very reminiscent of Blofeld in the volcano base.
Right. So they had some connection. There is some connection there.
There should be.
So after Felix asks him the silly question that they arrive at a train stop, like, why are you taking a train stop at 16 hours? What are you guys going to do for 16 hours? Oh, I get it. I know what you're doing.
So after they imply sex, it cuts to them actually playing gin rummy. And while they're getting on the train, they show a bunch of guys loading up these brown bags, that look like burlap sacks. And we find out that Teehee is had been hiding in one of them somehow, and nobody figured it out.
How? They never put together like, man, this was extra heavy.
Well, and Teehee's a tall dude. Like, he's not like a normal sized guy. He's got to be like 6'2".
Yeah, he is. That bag, it could not fit with him. No, there's no way he fit in that bag.
Anyway, so he comes into Bond's room and shuts up. Solitaire is laying in the fold-out bed, and he like locks her up in the bed, and then starts fighting Bond, and Bond ends up like kicking him out the window and
cutting the wires, locking his metal arm where he can't get out.
Right.
And then he ends up flipping him over because I forget in trains windows get pulled down, not pulled up, and he managed to flip him over. Disconnect his arm, and Teehee is gone, that we know. And then during this whole time, Miss Solitaire was locked in because in these trains you get these fold out like little beds or something. She got caught in one of those. She didn't know what was going on. She thought Bond was playing a joke on her.
Right.
And then at the end, they basically in the mission, and it all went well, or did it? Because guess who was riding on the train with them?
So on the front of the train, right before the credits, Baron Samedi is seen on the cattle guard laughing.
Mm-hmm.
So Bond killed him twice, and here he is still alive.
And to me, he should have been the villain the whole time.
Yeah, he should have been.
But that is the end of our mission assignment. So I guess the question is, Mr. Hanna, did he accomplish his mission? Did it feel like did he accomplish his mission?
Yes, and a lot of it wasn't left to chance. So a lot of it, some of it had to do with getting help from Felix, and then some of it was just Bond on his own. Well, basically just getting captured.
Yeah. And we also noticed that Bond, when it came to fight scenes, I don't think I ever saw him throw a punch at somebody. I want to say, I don't think.
Like, I think if Kananga had Scott from Austin Powers on his team, Roger Moore would have been dead.
I honestly think this is another thing that happened during the Sean Connery era where the villain kind of ruined it himself. He made it easy for Bond to do the mission.
Right.
And I feel like that's what Kananga did. He ruined the mission. He could have killed Bond a long time ago, all this stuff. But it's funny because, like, when he's not close to Bond, he wants him to automatically kill him. But when he finally gets a hand on Bond, he wants him to suffer.
Right.
Which that's a weird way to looking at it. But so I think basically Bond got it easy, and the villain just kind of screwed himself over. And he relied too much on Solitaire to tell his fate if he's going to live or not and all this stuff. And so, but overall, what did we think of the film?
I am not impressed.
Okay.
I think Bond's one-liners are pretty lame. Roger Moore spoke really softly. Wasn't
Not really dominant.
right. Not dominant. No intensity really. I mean, this is the first film with him in it, so maybe it'll change as time goes on. But I don't know. I thought he did a good job as far as being a secret agent. I just kind of wish he would have done more. I wish he would have been more suave.
Yeah.
I guess.
Okay. I felt like that this is a movie they took a chance on an idea, but I think also too they were trying to be careful why they did this idea because this movie alone was getting close to borderline racism in it. Borderline, I say, only because it's basically Bond against the whole city or against a culture of people,
Right.
and they happen to be black, but they never really showed some black people that were not part of that. So it kind of portrayed it was like him against all black people per se. I'm not saying that's what they were intended. That's just the way it kind of looked like.
In an effort to include more black actors and actresses, they threw them in probably wherever they felt like they could.
Yeah.
And it like I said earlier, very much like the end of John Wick, where you're like, how many assassins are there in New York?
Right.
You know?
Right. But you know, the villain to me was a guy that was kind of like, let me sit back and let everybody else do the job for me so I can just do my goal. But the problem was his henchmen were not doing the job either because they were being underutilized.
Right.
You know, Baron could have done a lot more. He could have been a guy that could have been chasing after Bond the whole time or messing with him or something like that to keep the story going, while Teehee was one in the back trying to do some of the dirty work. Those two could have led that movie.
I agree. And like I said, I wish Baron Samedi had more screen time, simply because he is a weird character. And it would...
he could have been one of my favorite... like
villains.
Villains in this whole thing. He was just, out of all the Bond villains, he was the one that was so unique. And so I just hate the fact that he didn't get used very well, and the fact at the end that we'll never see that character again, you know, and that's sad.
Right, especially because we know he survived.
Yeah, unless they want to do it later on in the Bonds, they want to bring him back somehow. But, you know, I feel like that they should have done it during the Roger Moore times instead of trying to bring him back now.
Right, if they brought back Jaws... because I know he makes a couple of appearances.
Right.
They could have easily brought back Baron Samedi.
And so, but I don't know how the movie felt or anything like that. But overall, like, I think some things they tried to put in, they just didn't work out. It felt like that they had everything written on paper, but then they forgot, oh, we need to add comedy. Oh, we need to add a chase. Right. You know, the boat chase was way too long. I think they were really doing it to show you a tour of the bayou, which we got it. Bayou is not really too remarkable to look at. You know, it's just a bunch of slums and swamps. We don't need to see 15 minutes of you going through the whole course of that. We get the picture. And then the comedy with the sheriff was kind of dumb too. You know, I feel like they were just trying to fill in some stuff till we can get to a certain point because the movie was going to be too short.
Right. And I think like what you were saying off podcast, the guy, the screenwriter, didn't want to write this one because it was involved drugs,
right, guys,
and he thought that was below James Bond's ability.
Right. And for people that don't know, the screenwriter was the guy that was screenwriting from Dr. No all the way till Diamonds Are Forever, and he refused to write the script of this one because of that reason. So they got someone else in to do this.
So maybe that had something to do with it also.
Yeah, and I think the tarot cards was an interesting idea, but it shouldn't have been the source of the movie.
Yeah.
You know, they really try to push that, and even at the end, you never saw a really deep romance with those two. Regardless, they just had one moment, and that was it. So let's talk about the Bond girl. There was two per se. Rosie was kind of a waste of time to me.
Yeah, and
she could have been cool.
She could have been really cool, but especially because Rosie is portrayed as like a new agent, so she's really green. Mm-hmm. She doesn't have any experience really, and Bond kind of teases her a little bit in the movie about that. So it would have been really cool for her because she was the handler for the agent that got killed, and then Bond was like her second mission. So it would have been cool to see her like redeem herself, like she helped Bond,
right?
You know, and so she's got like a 50-50 record instead of
right.
Oh, I killed an agent and I'm a spy too,
right? And then since they now portrayed her as, you know, the other side, it shows that like, is there any good guys in this film helping out Bond this whole time? Right. No, and then we have Miss Solitare, and Miss Solitaire to me feel like more of an eye candy than anything. I think she was probably almost worse as Honey.
Well, you know what's interesting about her is Rosie actually got a bikini scene. Solitaire did not. Solitaire mainly just kept showing like cleavage.
Yeah,
like that was her big thing. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But I agree with you. I kind of wish they just would have chosen one, because she's kind of like Solitaire is kind of like Pussy Galore minus
everything.
the edginess. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, oh, she's just kind of thrown in there,
Right.
and she's part of the bad guys at first, and nothing ever really comes out of that.
And you would think after taking her V card that she would be more involved and help Bond with more stuff just for the kick of it.
Right.
But like she just kind of just didn't really get a chance to shine as much as she wanted because, you know, she got captured immediately after the plane scene and then she was gone for a good portion of it.
Yeah, she was the damsel in distress.
Yeah,
for sure.
so basically. So that leaves us with, since Q Branch doesn't exist in this one, sad to hear that. Because that's Mr. Hanna's favorite part of this.
We can talk about cars.
What? How many cars crashed?
Well, so in the Sean Connery era, they all drove Fords. Ford was the big sponsor.
Okay.
In this, it's all Chevy.
Okay.
So it kind of makes me wonder what happened, like why they didn't continue with Ford. Were they looking for something new because it's a new Bond?
Maybe it's that. Maybe
Bond himself did not have a cool car in this one, you know? Like, he drove the Mustang, the convertible Mustang. They had that Toyota that was a special edition made specifically for that movie. And in this one, it's just like everyone drives around in like Chevy Malibus, except for aside from the Cadillacs, which were really exquisite looking.
the Pitmobile is probably the coolest looking car in that whole movie.
Right. All the cars were Chevy, but I just thought that was kind of interesting.
And then let's talk about how we feel overall about the villain, Mr. Big / Kananga. Like just him alone. Did he do anything for us? I think he just screwed himself over. I think he was a person that was all talk.
You know, what's weird about this villain is he's not working for Spectre, so there's no like world domination. You know,
He was trying to be a gold. It was supposed to be kind of like a Goldfinger feel, right?
right? And it didn't work out. Like, I'm going to get people addicted to drugs, and then I'm going to make more money, and I'm a businessman. Blah blah blah.
And it's bad because it on the outside looking in, it looks bad for the culture. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I didn't even consider that.
It just looks bad for that culture of our only villain side of us we can do is drugs. We can't. We're not good enough to think of missiles and exploding stuff. And I'm not trying to be that. I'm not going that route, guys. I'm not going that deep. I'm just saying, in that it's funny that drugs is hints to be the mechanism of what makes us the bad guys in this particular film.
Right.
And we it'll be cool to see something outside of that.
But I also find it interesting that the black CIA agent died.
And no one cared.
Well, right.
And he could have been a big part.
He could have gone down there.
He could have been the
with
tiger.
Bond instead of.
He could have been the tiger.
Right.
That would have been awesome. He would have been the tiger of this film.
Yep.
Two black actors, because apparently this movie's basically mostly black people. It would have been cool to have Rosie and him be these two people that back up Bond the whole time. The fisherman lived through all this.
Yeah.
And he only got like 2 scenes. He helped him get to the island, and he helped him get to the other island. That's it. You didn't help him on the speed chase. He didn't do nothing.
Right. No,
But he didn't die by the dragon car.
That's for damn sure.
But overall, he didn't get utilized very well. He was more of all talk, and he was a person that relied on faith of what he can do and not do.
Right, and he's a little more posh, like polished in this one. Mm-hmm. Like Sean Connery was, I don't know the right word. Sean Connery was still kind of like, you would look at him and think, okay, he's a man's man. He'll get dirty if he has to. Mm-hmm. Roger Moore, to me, because he wears gloves, he's always wearing a nice suit. Mm-hmm. You know, his suit coat's always buttoned up. Mm-hmm. You know, like he's more posh. Like he's not just refined, but I don't see him getting dirty.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Maybe they tried to match that with the villain. Like, you know, this Bond is not really the hardcore, so we can't make the villain hardcore either. Maybe. We'll find out as we go further in if that's the theory of maybe the Roger Moore Bond is more of like more looks than action, more smooth than maybe more action. We'll find out. But for all the people that sat here and listened to our briefing, I want to thank you so much. If you have any other questions, you can always email us at the ingameoffice@gmail.com. We are also part of this network called the In-Game Boss Program, where we have other wonderful shows like Game Halls of Rivalry, the In-Game Boss Podcast, and Area 44. And for this mission particularly, we are now beginning the Roger Moore era, and this is the first one. Me and Travis are coming off not really enjoying where so far, but it's only the beginning.
It's only the beginning.
You know, this is the Dr. Noah version of it, so we will find out. And it had a lot of similar things to Dr. No, if you think about it. But we can't wait to see this. We'll see where it's go. Maybe it'll be fun. Maybe it'll be sad. We don't know where it's going to happen next. But if you have any other fun information, or you have any comments, tell us what we're good, what we're bad. Tell about this new style that we're doing, if you like it or not. So you can always reach us at that email, or you can talk to us on Twitter and Facebook. And also, too, if you're listening to us on YouTube or Podbean or Apple Podcasts, those are other options you can listen on. And Travis, is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
No. Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, all that jazz.
Mm-hmm. And
if you have any comments about the movie, leave them down below. You know, just let us know what your thoughts are.
And on your report right there, what is the name of the next mission or next assignment that we're going to go?
Man with the Golden Gun.
Okay. So with that,
Scaramanga.
So with that, we will catch you on our next mission. Hi, and thank you so much for taking time to listen to the show that is part of the In-Game Boss program. Remember, you can always visit us on Facebook and Twitter to get up-to-date news about what shows are premiering and whatnot. And also, you can always listen to our shows on iTunes, Podbean, and YouTube. And remember to follow and subscribe, leave a review and a 5-star rating to keep us going. And thank you so much.